Jim.
And I'm just going to pass this around if everyone could just sign in as well.
As long as you hit that one, that's all it is.
Okay, cool. I got it. Yep, we're good.
Is it? Yeah, just. Okay, today is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. This is the meeting of the School Redistricting Start Times and Transportation Advisory Committee. First item on the agenda is just to do a roll call, which just passing around a sign-in sheet. If everyone can just sign in, you just need to put your name there. And the next thing on the agenda is public comment. We do have one member of the public here, Mary Elliott. Mary, if you'd like, share your comments with us.
Yes, so we live right on the border. I've already been through this once with one student who did well, but it was difficult to go through. We're lucky enough that we have amazing elementary schools, so it went fairly smoothly for her, but my hopes are that my currently enrolled students will be grandfathered into their current school. They've had amazing teachers, and I think they would benefit from staying in the same spot. I also I have concerns about what does this mean for middle school down the road. I have 3 children enrolled in the MK school system. So I'd like to collect information and see how the process goes.
When you say that you live on the border, what?
We are between Stony and Hamilton typically, although I've heard things about students being pushed to Fishing Cove, so I feel like I don't really know what the possibilities are, and it looks like you've gathered a great group of people, so I'm hopeful that it'll end up being what's best for the entire community.
Sure. And I can comment now, just kind of catch you up to speed of what we've talked about at past meetings, and Megan, as the other co-chair, you're welcome to if anybody else wants to jump in as well. So I will start with, we did receive numerous emails, a number of emails from families in the Glen Hill and Slocum area. Now, tell me if that's your neighborhood or not, but that there were concerns, and that is definitely a neighborhood that we are not looking at moving for a few reasons. One, that neighborhood has gone back and forth between Hamilton and Stony Lane for the past few years, and that just historically looking at it shows that that is not a long-term solution for what we're looking at doing. So that neighborhood is not being considered to be moved from Hamilton to Stony. The other reason why is because one of our goals for the future with building the new Whitford Middle School is to keep all elementary students together as they move on to middle school. And right now, Fishing Cove, for example, students are split between Davisville Middle School and Whitford Middle. And what our plan is once the new middle school is built, the feeder elementary schools to Whitford Middle, all those students would stay together. Feeder elementary schools from Davisville Middle, they would all stay together. If we were to move the neighborhood from Slocum and Glen to Stony Lane, now, if we want to kind of go with that vision, that means they would go to Davisville Middle with everyone else. That's a far drive, and logistically, Whitford Middle is closer to that neighborhood. We also want to minimize, as much as possible, how long students are on buses or transportation. So because of those factors, that neighborhood is not in any of the scenarios that we're looking at. Really kind of keyed in very closely to neighborhoods that are close to the schools that we are needing to move students to. And so the focus really is shifting some students from Hamilton to Fishing Cove and some students from Fishing Cove to Quincy. Another thing that we brought up in the past meetings is that we want to hear and consider what families are saying regarding the move of students. We know that there's a lot of emotion that comes into this, but we really need to look at the data. We need to use the data to make these decisions. As a dad, I have 4 children in this district. My youngest is at Stony Lane. My oldest just graduated from NK High School last year, and my other 2 are at the high school. And just going through and thinking about your children and what school they're at, and that move is very difficult. And as a teacher years ago, I sat on the redistricting committee when this district went from K-5 schools to K-3 and 4-5 schools. And remember, that was a big transition that we had to make. So we know that any decision we make is going to be emotional for those families that are involved. We want to be considerate of that. And even though we know, okay, well, the Glen and Slocum is not going to be touched, but there will be other neighborhoods, and we're going to look at those scenarios after. And we need to consider, that impact on the families and having to make that move. We discussed, trying to keep 4th and 5th grade, so if you have 4th and 5th graders that, just use Hamilton as an example, and now you have to go to Fishing Cove, trying to be able to keep 4th and 5th grade there. I will say, it's a challenge in doing that, and not having overages. We ran many scenarios, I'm gonna share that tonight. And I'll just kind of jump ahead. We're able to look at keeping the current 5th grade, you know, if your students in 5th grade to stay there, we can do that. We also said to consider keeping siblings there. As we look at all these variables of what will be the least disruptive, it doesn't always work to help in the solution of not having overages in the schools as well as the crowding as well. So looking at this, it's kind of like we gotta make a move, it's gonna have an impact, unfortunately, but we kind of have to make this move for the future in order to make sure that we are able to make space. So I know you're questioning about grandfathering, we will not be able to do that, I can tell you that right now, because if you have a current 1st grader at Hamilton and you're in the neighborhood that needs to move, the reason why we have to move you is because we need the space there. And if we're gonna grandfather children in, that's not going to provide a solution to what we need, unfortunately. And I know that's hard, and speaking as a dad, I know that's hard to have to move, but there are decisions that we're gonna have to make that may be tough decisions, but we have to make it based on like population and data and what we need to do in order to create space at one school to another school. And we even looked at, okay, what's the minimum disruption in this process?
Kenny, I don't know if you also said this, I apologize.
No, jump in,
My
please.
head's a little foggy, so I kind of zoned out for a minute, because I just did. But I don't know if you mentioned this too, part of the information that we have to think about is the contractual obligations too, with classroom size. So it's not just an arbitrary, we think there are too many kids in the classroom, or Dr. Duva and the admins think that there are enough kids. There are actual teacher, within the teacher contract, you can only have X number of kids per grade.
There's a cap in each grade, and so when I say overage, if, you know, for example, in grade 5, the cap is 26 in the classroom. So once you go over 26, now we're over, and you know that creates an overage, and that's what we're trying to eliminate, as well as also the number of classrooms that we have in a building, making sure we have space available and have seats in every classroom.
That is not my neighborhood, so it does not make me feel better.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So that's the only public comment we have. So we're actually just gonna kind of get right into looking at the possible scenarios for us to consider. Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question before we got into the scenarios. One is that I realized in conversation with another parent recently, we haven't talked about Jamestown School in any of these situations. And there is increasing capacity at Jamestown School. In fact, as far as I understand, the population continues to dwindle, so they're actually not having almost enough students to fill spaces, and they're looking at how they're gonna manage their teacher load going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I just flipped through quickly to see so I just wanted to kind of, sorry, as a wild card, throw that on the table. And kind of continuing in the wild card situation, I've been talking with folks at Brown to see if there's anyone who can help us with this from a big data standpoint. And I've talked with a number of different people. There are potentially master students who are in big data and education who might be willing to pair with us on this. I think you might know Brenda Santos at Annenberg Institute. She was a great resource, and she was able to pull current numbers in terms of kind of where populations are. And which leads me to my final point, which is what is the latest we're able to make a recommendation on this?
Well, my hopes is that we can make a recommendation early April.
Right.
Because it's also going to impact OVK registration, and we have to let families know.
Yeah.
I really don't want to go into the summer, so
Yeah.
you know, April is a goal
Yeah.
for us to do that. I mean, if we were to push, we could push a little. I really don't want us going into June,
Right.
just because families need to plan.
Yes.
And I think that's important that we are able to share this with them so they know.
Yeah.
Totally open if they want to look at our data and to look at and dig into it a little bit deeper than what we have done as well. Another set of eyes never hurts. And that's something if they wanna, you know, kind of partner with us and we can share it, and that way at our March 11th meeting, maybe they can give us some feedback.
Yeah.
Definitely can do that. So.
Yeah, if that's something the community is interested in, I have a meeting with one person, they're like, oh, you can talk to somebody else, and so I'm still trying to find the right person. There are students who are interested, this is the work they do, but, it's a matter of finding the right person. So I also wanted to raise it to the committee before I would have, kind of said, yes, we'll work with you on this project.
But I mean, if that's something the committee wants, we could, I just wanna make sure we get that information to them, like, as soon as possible, so that by our next meeting, which is in a few weeks,
Yeah.
maybe they can get us some information so we can look at that, if that's possible.
That's the end of my wild card on it.
And the Jamestown, just to go back on that, I will say when I was the superintendent in Jamestown, we always kind of look at what can we do to possibly partner with North Kingstown because of population in Jamestown, just like every district is decreasing. And, I know that there's space at the elementary school, there's space at the middle school. And that was always a concern too of being able to keep the teachers there, great teachers, be able to keep them there as well. And that's something that would definitely be a bigger conversation, because we have to talk among school committees and towns, because that would involve tuition as well. And then also looking at what would that look like if some of our students went over to Jamestown.
Does the system where Jamestown school students currently go to North Kingstown High School provide us a model for reciprocity in theory?
It would, it could. I mean, it's definitely something that we could look at. It's just, I don't see that as a possible solution for this coming school year.
Right, okay.
I just think some of the logistics we'd have to look at, and it's definitely something we could look into. And then we'd also have to think, okay, well, who would go to Jamestown
Yes.
versus who would be moving to another school, right? So that's something we'd have to really look at and consider, and how would that process work? Is it still looking at certain neighborhoods, instead of going to Hamilton, you go to Melrose, or that's just something that we'd have to look at, and we'd have to look at too budgetarily, what does that cost? Because you're looking at transportation, you're looking at the cost of tuition, does it somehow balance out with the cost of the tuition for the high school here, with them sending students to us? I mean, that's definitely something that we could look into in the future.
And along the lines of budget, to get back to your previous question about, when should we get these scenarios to the school committee? Naturally, as with everything, the sooner the better,
Yes.
without rushing anything.
Yes.
But, we did just have our budget meeting last night where we finalized what we're gonna send to the town, which had to be there today. So some of this is gonna have, we discussed last night, a fiscal impact, whether or not we do the redistricting and get it up and running in September. So obviously, the sooner that we can get scenarios to the school committee, and then we can maybe, tighten up the budget, especially if we're gonna end up being asked to cut more from the town, that's gonna be important too, to figure out, like for instance, if we, don't need as many teachers in a certain school because the numbers have, we were able to shift lines and redistrict, so
Yeah,
it's a lot of moving parts, but
Yeah.
obviously the sooner the better.
yeah. Alright, thank you.
Yep, I had a quick question about the scenarios, just in general. I know that at the last meeting, you had mentioned approximately 3 scenarios putting forth. Are we, I see 4 on here and I'll let you get to it, but are we gonna try to kind of narrow it down to 3 at some point? Or are we just gonna go with the full 4 to submit to the school committee?
We'll go through it and see if some of them don't work.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
And if there's another scenario we can work with, then we'll add it.
Okay. I wasn't sure what our goal was for,
So,
from this committee
yeah, so
going
I
up.
did say, you're absolutely correct, I did say if we kind of have 3, I think it'll actually be less once we look at these scenarios.
Okay.
So,
Dr. Jewell, can I just ask one clarifying
yes.
question, because I noticed on here, and I know you talked about it at the prior meeting, this homeschool versus, schools where they've reached out to you at some point and looked for an exception. Is
so like a
that-
voluntary transfer?
Yes, is that, as we look at this just holistically, is that a significant part of the problem? Are there a significant, you might get
It
into it, but.
definitely impacts numbers, because those voluntary requests do impact the numbers of students in the schools they're going into. And so what we do when we look at projections, and I'll get into that, we put everyone back in their home school.
Okay.
So if you are a Christian English student and family and you requested your children to go to Quinnesset, when we look at projections, you're back in your home school, so we can look at that. And I do think that moving forward, we're going to be limiting how many of those moves we actually accept. 'Cause
That
it
was
does
my question.
create problems.
Should be, I would
Yeah.
think, more than exception.
All of these scenarios So if ask questions, stop me along, but I think it'd be good for us to get into the scenarios that we worked through. We took we listened to what people were saying here, and I sat with Michelle from transportation. Unfortunately, she's not gonna be able to make it tonight, but I can reach her by phone if questions come up. And we went through really pulling the neighborhoods, looking at how many kids are in each neighborhood, looking at what grade they'll be going into next year, and then looking at what happens if we move them, what does that do to transportation and busing. All of that was looked at and considered as we put together these scenarios. So there are 4 scenarios that we are going to look at. As we go through this, I'm just gonna be completely transparent with you, because we noticed an error in this sheet right before when we were making copies earlier. I'm gonna be comparing this presentation that I did earlier to these notes, because there might be a change on one of these, just in case. So scenario 1 that we're going to look at, and I'll get these passed out to you, is keeping all of so any involuntary transfer that we had to make, meaning that we had to move someone because of overages in a building in that cap, or voluntary transfers, were put back in their home schools. So that's what scenario 1 looks at. No redistricting, it's just everyone goes back into their home schools, and this is what the projections look like for next year. And in that, there are 12 grade 5 students. So we looked at these scenarios, focusing on keeping grade 5, students going in grade 5 in their current schools, so they're not moving. Keeping siblings there was a challenge. So there was a not in these scenarios. We can still create a scenario with it, but it was a challenge of keeping siblings in the school as well without creating overages in the classrooms. Scenario 2 is having all voluntary, if all voluntary stayed at the 24-25 school, meaning that we accept those requests, they stay at the school they requested to be at this year, and there's no redistricting. So this is just so we look and see what happens if we don't redistrict. Scenario 3 is taking all the involuntary and voluntary, just like scenario 1, and putting them back in their home school location, but redistricting Fishing Cove, Hamilton, and Quinnesset neighborhoods. Scenario 5 is the same as scenario 3, but we leave the grade 5 students at their current schools. So that means they don't move.
Dr. Dewey, does that mean that scenario 4 is only accounting for 12 students? A
So
differential is
scenario 4,
Is it still only those 12 fifth graders, I guess?
it has to
Scenario
add up,
1.
I'm not
Okay.
sure. So I'm gonna work through the printouts. I'm noticing that as when we printed this, some of the school names got cut off on the side.
You can see in the pink, kind of figure it out.
Yeah. So let's look at scenario 1. The first school that's on here, that's Fishing Cove. I'll wait till everybody has. First school is Fishing Cove. The second school is Forest Park. Third school, and that's the box that's in pink on the left side, is Hamilton.
Is it just all alphabetical?
Yes. The fourth school is Quidnesset, and the fifth school is Stony Lane. And this is the same on all of the sheets. The next one are the middle schools, goes DMS, then WMS, and then the high school's at the bottom. Everything is on 2 pages. We're not gonna talk about high school, but if you look at it, you start wondering, high school numbers include the students from Jamestown in 10th, 11th, and 12th, and the CTE students that we know that are coming in. We don't have all those answers for 9th grade, so when you look at the 9th grade number, it's low. It's because the Jamestown students are not in there, and incoming CTE students are not in there yet. Because we don't have a definite, so we don't put that in that projection number yet. And when you look at K, these are live documents, so as registrations are coming in, we put those numbers in. So you might say, oh, wow, there's only 20 kindergarten students at one school, how come? It's because they're not all in there yet. We are projecting about 266 students. Based on that, we will still need 14 kindergarten teachers. However, those 14 kindergarten teachers might not be in the schools that you see on this sheet, because Stony Lane right now has 5, because we needed 5 there. I don't think we're gonna need 5 at Stony Lane next year. Looking at some of these scenarios, we might need another K at Fishing Cove instead. So we may have to move K teachers around based on where they are. Sorry, yes.
It's okay. Is it safe to say that most of this conversation, at least tonight, is basically gonna focus on the elementary schools?
Yes.
Okay, and so, because I do know, we've been receiving emails as well about a lot of people concerned with, then they get into, from the elementary level, Davisville versus Whitford, but,
So I can comment on that.
yeah.
too. And I'm sorry, you asked that earlier, and I never commented on the middle school. So we are not making any changes to middle schools. So there's no redistricting happening at this point that moves students from the middle schools that they're currently going to. And when we look at the scenarios, the neighborhoods that are being recommended to move don't impact the middle schools. They still would be going to the same middle school.
Because I know that's a big concern about a lot of people in the community, so I
Thank you for
figured,
bringing that up.
yeah.
So are you saying Fish and Cove will still split
Fishing
until,
Cove will still split, yeah, we're not
and
gonna
that
make
won't
that.
be addressed?
It will, no, because I wanna minimize how much movement we're making right now, and I think it's best to wait for that once the new Whitford Middle is built, and then make those changes. So, but even looking when we get into the neighborhoods, like the neighborhoods that are being recommended to move from Hamilton to Fishing Grove would still be going to Whitford based on where they're located. They would move, and the neighborhoods that are moving from Fishing Grove to Quidnesset would still be going to Davisville based on where they're located. But we're not going to take, Fishing Grove and make any changes right now at this point. I think it's best because we have that as part of the whole scenario with the new Whitford Middle School, that we wait to do that once that new Whitford Middle School is built. So I think small steps in making changes is best right now versus making some very big changes in short time. I think, I said earlier, like, we need to look at short-term goals and long-term goals in making these decisions, and, school start times still are something we need to consider.
And also not continuous change, so like if we do
Yeah,
something now for Whitford Middle, and then the new building comes in and we have to shift again in 3 years, it's just a lot of movement for the kids and families.
No, that's okay, it's such a small population of them, and looking at all the scenarios, that group would still be going to Whitford. So it's been an issue for the last several years at Fishing Cove, that it's the only elementary school that splits. So it's something that I'll address it another time, because I do think it's something to look at. If you're such a small population, why not let that small population do that?
And so with that small population, instead of going to Whitford, go to DMS?
No, it's
No.
it's reversed,
Reverse.
because then it would still be
So
consistent
it's
with what you're doing.
We could look at it,
Yeah,
I just
yes,
don't,
yeah.
I don't wanna say, yes, that's something we think that.
Right. Sorry.
That's okay, no, that's why I said, just stop us when we
Yep.
go to put out comments and. So looking at scenario 1 that's here, a few things to point out. So this is keeping, putting everyone back in the home schools, no redistricting. So at Fishing Cove, we would be over capped in grade 5 by 1 student. Forest Park, in grade 3, there are only 2 spots left available for students that might be moving in, and and in grade 4, there are only 3 spots available. And then at Hamilton, grade 3 only has 3 spots available. So it doesn't seem as, oh, this is a big problem, it has been in the past few years, but it's still early with people coming in and registrations, that there's still a chance that other class grades in these schools could hit cap. And so that would be scenario 1 is just we don't do anything.
Dr. Duba, does that
Yes.
mean though, that's where there's spots and every other grade is at capacity?
So looking at, yeah, so when you look at the sheet in front of you, so you
Yeah.
just look at Fishing Grove, for example. Grade 1 currently has 13 seats remaining there. So
Oh, so
there's
it's,
a,
I'm sorry, gotcha, I didn't look at you.
sorry, so if you look at this,
Understood.
so what you see at underneath each grade is the contractual cap of how many students you can have at each grade level in a classroom. So grade 1, our cap is 24 students. Fishing Cove is expected, so to have, Fishing Cove can have a max of 48 students based on having 2 teachers, 2 classrooms. Currently, right now, we have 35 students registered to go in grade 1 there, which means we have 13 seats available. Grade 2, similar cap of 24 in a class. We have 2 teachers there right now. The max would be 48. We currently have 45 students, so we have 3 seats available. These numbers also consider students in special education programs. So what we talked about, like, you know, at the budget meetings and changes for special education, we are moving at Fishing Cove 2 more special education programs there. We're trying to limit how many programs we have at Davisville Academy because it doesn't offer, just for you that may not know, Davisville Academy currently houses the clinical day program Positive Pathways, which is for students with different special needs that require to be there. But they're not integrated in with a general classroom because there's no general classrooms there. Originally, that program was put in place to be a clinical day program to tuition students in. That was years ago. We're trying to make the move and the shift that those students should be, elementary school or middle school, so they are with all of their other peers and students. So we're moving. This current year, we moved 1 classroom over from DA to Fishing Cove. We're going to move over the 2nd classroom, and we have to add another classroom based on preschool students. So we're also considering the number of students coming in from preschool and their needs and how that impacts programming. So the plan at Fishing Cove is to have the Positive Pathway programs there. So we'd have a K program, we'd have a 1 through 2 program, and a 3, 4, 5. Those students also need a spot in the regular classroom, so they're double counted in the numbers. They're in that blue color, where it says 8 students for K, 2 for grade 1, 3 for grade 2. They also have to be counted in your regular education classrooms for inclusion purposes. In order to do that, we are also recommending I want to say it's directly related to this reconfiguration because we can do it without reconfiguring. We are recommending to move the preschool to Davisville Academy, Davisville Elementary, when it was Davisville Elementary, where it was once before, and really start turning that into more of an early childhood program at that school. This way it opens up space at Fishing Cove for these other programs, as well as other classrooms that we may need as we grow in the district. And it allows us to increase our preschool program in the future at that school. It also means that the Office of Family Living, OFL learning, I don't keep saying moving, Office of Family Learning, OFL would move to make space. So we would keep the parents teachers program, child outreach coordinator, they would stay at Davisville because they would all be connected to the early childhood program. But OFL, we would look at moving over to Quinnesset, and that's something that we're looking at as far as where they would go at Quinnesset. And that way they're within that school. So those are shifts that we're making at the same time as this reconfiguration that opens up additional space for us in using Davisville for a school. I know last year I said the school committee we really should move the administrative offices there to not pay a lease, but we're realizing we need to keep that as a school. and we don't wanna take away assets that we have that can continue in the schools for these programs, so we can expand the preschool.
And just a quick clarification about DA, the move from Fishing Cove to DA. Actually, I think it's more than you guys make a recommendation now, as of last night. So, just so you know, like, you have the green light, so, the administration has the green light, and,
I feel like we sort of have the green light.
no, you got the green light. You make it happen.
We got the budget.
Dr. Duva. You have the budget, so we're gonna, hopefully Dr. Duva and staff can.
I have full confidence that we're making the move, so.
I
it's
told you last
happening.
night, I have full confidence you're making the move too. So.
Right?
But just so you know, it's
If
hopefully
we
gonna
don't,
happen.
we're in really big trouble.
Right, right. So we'll do it.
That's
Yeah,
what I'll say.
so what Megan's talking about, there are some budget, fiscal, requirements in moving the preschool over to Davisville, and that was approved in the budget for those funds. But we still essentially need approval from school committee to say, yes, they approve the move. I think we have the support.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But that will then impact you for Fishing Cove, cause that will allow you to open more
Allows us-
classrooms.
So we get 5 classrooms. So
Yeah.
what happens is 5 classrooms open up.
Yeah,
One of, 2 of the classrooms would become the 2 additional positive pathways, or it's now you're down to 3. And then another classroom, from what I'm hearing, needs to be shifted from other spaces that we have, just to lessen like the crowdedness that's happening there. And then you have 2 classrooms that are available
to
for
shift,
something in the
yeah.
future.
Colleen would really like to use that for PTOT type stuff, because
Cause they're in the, middle,
upstairs, yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the voluntary, involuntary? I think it relates to what you were just talking about, just wanna make sure I understand. So a student who attends Hamilton's Compass program, but based on geography, would have gone to Quidnesset, for example. Are they listed on the projections in option 1 at Quidnesset or at Hamilton?
No, if they're in a specialized program, they're in the school that has the specialized program.
Okay, so.
So that
that's
is not a voluntary and
Right,
voluntary move.
Right, it's just the placement based
So
on
that's based on
their
their
IEP.
placement.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that that was reflected, okay.
An involuntary move is when we say, okay, we don't have room in grade 3 at a certain school, and we have to
Yeah,
move you to another school. Any questions on scenario 1? Is there extra scenarios for
I think that,
sheets?
yeah, the packets are there, but are there any more of the colored?
That's
version?
on the-
Yeah.
You can.
Can we just pass them down to Rachel?
Oh, they're over there.
Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't chance it. Everybody was like,
I was ready.
I sent the doc to you.
Yes, Rachel.
Thank you.
what?
Alright. So scenario 2, I just wanna make sure this. So in scenario 2, this is all voluntary students are staying in their current school. So if you ask to move to Hamilton in this scenario, you're staying at Hamilton, we're accepting that voluntary transfer. And it does not have any redistricting. So the only difference is we're not doing any involuntary transfers, we're just doing the voluntary. So at Fishing Cove, if we kept the voluntary transfers at the schools, you can see that it puts us over cap in certain places. So grade 5 at Fishing Cove would be over by 3 students. And then in grade 2, we would only have 2 spots available. And then at Forest Park, grade 4 would only have 2 spots available.
Does the, like the blue for Forest Park, for example, indicate that there's a consideration of removing a teacher in grade 2? Is that why it's blue? Because of the big gap, or?
So we really can't do that, because if you look at what
Cause
the
that would make it,
caps-
it would be too tight, we'd
Yeah,
have one
it's
space.
just showing that there's
It's
space.
just highlighting the size of it.
Yeah, some of them are comments that our registrant has in there, just so we know that where we're making moves and
Yeah,
shifts,
yeah.
so that way we can go back and know that what we moved. We're kind of keeping those cookie trails for us to
Yeah.
go back to review and look at.
Doesn't seem like scenario 2 really solves any of the problems, they're actually adding more kids back.
That's
into
what I was
the
gonna
element.
say.
Yeah.
We're not
Probably
really
worse
solving.
right too.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's not, so we're right here, I'm starting with the ones that really aren't going to
The
possibly.
game is to guess which one he
More
doesn't. You guys are doing well now.
So then so I'm just, because this is the exercise we went through to show a little bit, this is what could work, this is what may not work. So then scenario 3 is, so involuntary transfers, all the back to home schools. We're not involuntary transferring anyone, and we're not accepting any voluntary transfers. I just wanna put, however, there are some requests that are put in that we may have to accept because of just decisions that were based at a school level with families or whatnot that we may still need, we may have to accept. So, I just wanna kind of put that there could be a few voluntary requests that we have to do based on school placement and what situations are, internal situations. This puts all the voluntary back in their home school, and it does have the redistricting of Fishing Grove, Hamilton, and Quidnesset. I will get to what neighborhoods this considers in a moment, I just wanna kind of go through those numbers, 'cause I'm sure that's what everyone's like, wait, who's moving? So in doing this, Fishing Cove grade 5 has an overage of 2 students. On the presentation, just write on it and note it, it says 1, it's actually 2. This is where there was error and I didn't get a chance to change the, so Fishing Cove grade 3 would be over by 2 students. No, I'm sorry.
No, grade 5.
I am looking at the wrong grade, it is correct, I'm looking at grade 5. In Fishing Cove, there is no overage in grade 3, cross that out.
That was your error.
There is, because
Mine is
3
one.
spots available, so we had to make a shift. The overage is grade 5, where we're over by 2 students. This scenario does not keep the grade 5 students in their current schools. This scenario has grade 5 students moving to the schools that their neighborhood is now going to. And cross out in the where it says K is at capacity, K is not, there would be seats available.
So if you kept the grade 5 in this scenario at the school they're currently voluntarily in, is there no issue?
So in this scenario,
Oh, sorry.
so in this scenario, the grade 5 students, the grade 5 don't stay at their current school. So if you are at
Right.
Hamilton and you're going into grade 5 and you have, your neighborhood's moving to Fishing Grove, you're moving to Fishing Grove, you're not staying at Hamilton.
Gotcha,
The next scenario
understood.
does have them staying at their current school. Yes. If we look at Forest Park, grade 3 has 2 spots available, and grade 4 has 3 spots available. We're pointing out the classes that are getting tight, right? All the other classes have more space, like grade 5, there are 13 seats available. It's just looking at us and knowing that if we make this move, we're going to be close on some of these other class grade levels. And then at Quidnesset, grade 5 is over by 4 students in this scenario. Now in all these scenarios, it is early and things could change. Families can move, families can move in, so that's the only thing that we can consider that, we're projections, but people move into the district, that could impact this.
I'm sorry if you already covered this. What happens when, for example, your Vanessa is over by 4 students in grade 5? Like what does that actually mean?
So there are two options.
Yeah.
What we do is we have to transfer them to another school, which
Okay.
we're trying to avoid doing.
Yeah.
The other option is we work with our teachers union and see if they will agree to be paid overages.
Okay, so there is
Not favorable.
not
to
great
be
options,
honest.
but there
Right.
is.
That is what happens.
Uh-huh.
Neither of them are really favorable to do.
Right.
Typically, we go the route of working with the union to
Mhm.
pay an overage if it's one student, or maybe two, and there's specific reasons of why that student needs to be there, and we have done that before. But there's a cap in the contract for a reason, to keep those classes at a reasonable
Yeah.
size.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Ken, real quick, just to, for scenario 3 to like look at it, really the only issue would be in Quinnesset, the 5th grade.
5th grade at Quinnesset, yes.
And then Fishing Cove would have 2, but the undergrades are not impacted.
They are
There,
not
there
impacted.
seems to be, so that's a good
Yes,
indicator. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. And then, let's look at scenario 4, and then we'll get into the neighborhoods, just to kind of keep on the same. So in scenario 4, the only change from scenario 3 is keeping students that are going in grade 5 in the current school they're at. So if you have a student that is and you're at Fishing Cove, and you have a student that's entering grade 5, but your neighborhood is being moved to Quinnesset, your grade 5 student is staying at Fishing Cove in this scenario. And so looking at this at Fishing Cove, grade 5 is over by 1 student. Just want to make that change in the presentation that we have here. And grade 3 has 3 spaces available. There's no overage, there's 3 spots available. Forest Park, grade 3, grade 4 gets close. Grade 3 has 2 spots available, and grade 4 has 3 spots available. If you notice Hamilton in this scenario, we would be eliminating 2 classrooms at Hamilton with this move. Kind of what we're looking to do. We're looking to give more space at Hamilton, there's no space there. So in making this shift, students are going to other schools. And if you look, it's grade 2 and grade 4, where there's space available. Because if you look at overall, how many 4th grade teachers you have in the district, and how many 4th grade students we're getting, there's space throughout the district to do that. In this scenario, we're eliminating a grade 4 and we're eliminating a grade 2, which means we're now giving 2 classrooms back to Hamilton, and in spaces that they're overcrowded and they're sharing, they get to spread out and give them a little more room. Doing the same thing at Fishing Cove by moving the preschool out. This is the scenario I kind of say, let's look at.
So in those 2 grades, they'd go down to 3 teachers, is that what that means?
They,
Okay.
yes.
But those teachers would go to a different school?
No,
No,
there isn't
those
a
would be
need.
eliminated.
You know, what we discussed last night at the school committee, my recommendation is in order to not to increase our budget, those positions are transferred to the 2 special education positions we mentioned. So essentially, in the long run, these senior teachers are unfortunately laid off, 2 new special ed positions are put in, and then we look at see who in the district has the certification possibly to move into that, so that way you're not cutting anyone.
Yep.
So like, when you look at it, it's a 2 for 2, so really, hopefully, no one really does lose their job if certs match up with what the needs are. But budgetarily, it also gives us the funds that are needed for the other 2 special ed positions that were recommended to be put in place in the district for next school year. We also, working with the school committee last night, we found ways to shift funds around, so that way if something doesn't go as planned, the money is in the budget to hire 2 more teachers. but it means it's cuts we made last night, and it's moving items from the operating budget to the fund balance, so, yeah.
Did you explain before I came why we need the 2 more teachers?
I did not get into, so the, additional K positive pathways program at Fishing Cove is new, so that's a new teacher we have to hire. And that also comes with additional teacher assistants that are in the budget. And then we're adding an intensive resource program with Fifth Middle School. So we added a special ed teacher and a teacher assistant for that program with Fifth Middle. Just based on continuum of supports and needs that are needed for our students as they are moving up in grades. So those are the 2 programs that we prioritized and added into the budget for next year.
Could you also, while we're on that subject, just either you or Dr. Santa, just let the committee know, if we go forward with the Davisville move and Fishing Cove classrooms open up, there will be, I think, 5 classrooms open up now, or?
Yeah, it'll be only 2 by plan, so we would use, the plan is to move the upper elementary DA program to Fishing Cove, keep the one that we already have there. We would add the Positive Pathways K, that's 3 of the 5, and then, Colleen, actually, that's the 3, 1 is just a transfer, it's really 2 out of 5. And then Colleen has requested that, or has thought that one of those other classrooms should be used for a PTOT space, because they're kind of smushed upstairs.
Yes, we were talking about right when you walked in.
Yeah, so that's kind of what, that's the plan, so it would overall open up 2 more classrooms, and potentially it could be 3 if the space is not used in that way. So,
So the K position, is that, classroom, is that the one that is currently at Stony Lane moving over to Fishing Cove?
no.
That's a different program.
Completely different.
No, I cannot, if you see stress on my face, it's, I just re-looked at my numbers,
Now I can see.
and I'm wicked concerned about, we have about, the most intense needs that we've seen in a really long period of time. This is nation and statewide, but how it affects us here, just to give you an idea, normally around this time of year, I'm worried about 5, maybe 6 kids of where they're gonna go from preschool to K. Keeping in mind, we added more intense preschool programs for this school year. We have a concern for 30 kids, 30. Not 5, not 6, but 30. So that has led us needing other options. So adding K back into Compass at Hamilton, so that'd be a K2 Compass program. Keeping the Stony Compass program to add another layer, and it's adding the Positive Pathways K. And even with that, to be very honest, I am very stressed. I looked at numbers again, because we were looking at something regarding so if they're in a program, they don't need their K spot in this school, so that helps with redistricting, or could shuffle something in redistricting. And when I'm looking at that, I get a little worried, so we will see. I have a couple ideas that I'm gonna try to flesh out, and I'll bring it forward when I need to.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of information, but I think
It's
it's
a
so
lot.
important
To understand
everybody
why
to
we're
realize
coming from.
there are so many moving parts, and there are so many needs, and different needs than just what we've seen in years past.
No, they're really intensive needs. We're talking about kids with fentanyl poisoning, we're talking about kids, needing medical support, I had a kid move in today that's a high school student that has multiple needs and, things like that. Yeah, so, okay. So
Yeah.
just, things move, people move in, and they're all great, it's just making sure that we can meet all their needs is the stress, not like a names or anything. And great families and everything, but we just really have to think about how can we support the kids?
Thank you. for that overview.
Yeah, so that's sort of where we're at.
There's a lot that we are
There's a lot of
considering and making the move and what will be best for the district and trying to minimize as much disruption as possible.
I have a question about sort of optimal open spots.
Yes.
I know we're sort of saying 2 to 3 spots is tight, especially this early in the year. So what is an optimal flex number? Is that more than 2?
I'd say, I think
5?
we feel comfortable at 6.
6?
Be at 6.
Just to
Just
sort of frame
Kind
that.
of have that
Kind of fluff.
space, but, it's early and may not be a problem, but could be.
Same thing for specialized programs, I like at least a 10% fluff.
That was the other thing.
It's like weddings, right? About
Yeah, you just
50% of
know.
people don't.
As I said, kids move, we get new families, and there are some people that move out, but not always, so you're
Right.
kind of like,
And you have to
Shuffle.
consider, like, Rachel and I we were talking about this earlier So I think with the specialized programs, when you have specialized programs in a school, you know, Hamilton, for example, has 2. If you're gonna say you're gonna have a max of, I'm just gonna say a number of 8 students in that program, you need to make sure you have 8 spots available
For kindergarten already.
in the building in the gen ed classrooms. You never know what grade those students are going into, and it's easy when you say we're creating a K program. So you know, all right, we need to make sure we have 8 spots available in K, but when it's a 1 to 2 or 3 to 5, you're kind of making sure you leave some space there, so if students have to go into that program, you have a space in their gen ed classroom for them as well.
The scenario that Kenny was talking about, that sometimes we may pay overage for one kid, may occur because in the middle of the year, we may need to shift a student to a specialized program, and there's no space in that actual academic class. And yeah, we consider that, but if the student really needs that level of support, I'm gonna have to do that. The nicer thing about it is that a lot of times those students are not full-time in that regular class, but they still need to have the access to everything having to do with that regular class, if that makes sense. So we always wanna make sure they have that ability.
So it would kind of seem, I'm hearing all of this, it's really scenario 3 or 4.
That's what I was just about to say.
Unless we come up with something else, and there's a scenario 4+ that we literally, Joanne and I had just done hot off the press that I didn't put copies of, but I can talk about. But that was 4+. It's 4, but maybe
It seems like 1 and 2 are sort of off the table, I guess.
1 or 2, I definitely say, that's not really gonna help us. But we wanted, we also ran a scenario where we moved students from Forest Park to Quinnesset. It doesn't work, so I didn't bother even putting it out here. So we've had like 7 scenarios. We whittled it down to what was important to bring here. Because when you move students out of Forest Park to Quinnesset, you're making Forest Park really small. And then we're kind of making Quid a little too big. Even though you can make the space, we really don't want to do that. Kind of don't want to do what we did at Stony Lane this year.
So what specifically is the issue with scenario 1? It looks like there's only an overage of 1 student, and you'd save, you know, a lot of kids moving into redistricting just by moving to 12.
You're not solving the numbers problem on this one, like you still haven't solved the overage in Hamilton
Yeah, but
issue.
you're still, some of it has to do with the classroom space as well. So Hamilton is using every single room possible in their building.
And doubling up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's also not just the numbers of students, it's what space is available in their building. You know, when you have a classroom right now, we have a room, and Fred and Jen correct me, but, and Judy too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
we have a
well,
K
they're
classroom
sharing
that's being
space.
shared with the reading specialist.
Yeah.
That's not ideal.
No.
I mean, the reading specialist is on one side of the room and then the kindergarten classroom's on the other, but that's really not ideal. So we're trying to resolve that issue as well. It's not just the number of students, but it's the allocation of space in the building.
Well, is scenario 3 then better than scenario 1, if scenario 3 doesn't open up space in Hamilton? Per the point that the gentleman made about,
Well, it does, though, you're only at 330 from 412. So you, in total,
the total number.
you're going to
Yeah.
330 from 412, so you are solving that. And every other school is pretty, I don't want to speak for you, but if you look at the
No,
numbers.
that
and-
makes sense.
Yeah.
If you look at the total numbers.
Yeah, if you look at scenario 3, you could, maybe we could reduce grade 2 by 1 classroom.
But if you look at the total numbers, your point being,
Right.
the school,
Because right now there's
that
412
the-
students.
the bullet points might not, don't tell the full picture of the benefit of 3 over
Correct.
11.
Yeah.
I'm interested in 4+.
Yeah,
Waiting.
is 4+ have like, none that are close?
I'm gonna get to that, and I wanna put a hold on that, okay? So,
Pushing in for 4+. We don't need.
only because when you rush, that's when we make mistakes, and that's why I didn't print or bring anything. So I will talk about it. So here are the current values. I thought it'd be helpful to look at that. You have that in the printout in front of you. So it's hard to read some of these street names, but I just want to kind of show where the current boundaries are in comparison to the move that we're going to make. So on your sheet, what's in green are the boundary lines for Quidnesset, those are the streets and neighborhoods that go to Quidnesset. And what is in pink are the lines for Forest Park. In the scenario that we did not even give to you, because it doesn't work, we looked at this area back here, which is Mountain View, and having them go to Quidnesset, because it's close in proximity with transportation. But it really doesn't help us. So that's why we decided not to make any moves within Forest Park to Quid, and just keep the boundaries for Forest Park the same. The next one are your current boundary lines for Stony Lane. So, in addition to considering population of students, looking at projections, looking at new developments, we also have to consider the bridge, and I think I mentioned this before, that is on Davisville Road that cannot be used by our school buses because of the weight. And they are not going to fix that bridge for a while. And even once they do start working on that bridge, it's gonna cause transportation problems for us for access to the other side of town. So we cannot move anyone from, well, I don't wanna say we cannot. We're not suggesting, we'll use that word, we're not suggesting to move any neighborhoods from Stony Lane to another school. Because if we were going to move anyone from Stony to another school, most likely would be like the Forest Park Quidnesset area, just looking at neighborhoods. But when you can't access the bridge over here with the bus, that means now we're transporting them up through East Greenwich, which we currently have to do a little bit with busing, but it adds more time. That's what happens with transporting those students to Davisville Middle School, right? They gotta go around. We don't want to put something that's now creating another problem. So we're leaving the current neighborhoods that go to Stony Lane at Stony Lane.
And I think we heard a little while ago from Michelle at one of the meetings, last meeting maybe, that they're also gonna be working on Frenchtown Road.
Yes, that area too. So you
Right,
got the bridge,
so-
the Davisville Bridge, you got the Frenchtown Road bridges, they're all gonna be working on that. There was a meeting back in the fall that the two towns plus members of the town that would be involved as we had a meeting, just so we would understand what's happening in the upcoming construction. So we have to take that into consideration as well in these moves. So we do it, there's a lot of different variables that we have to consider. So the next one are our current boundary lines for Fishing Cove. So this is where we start to make some moves. So right now, you can see that Fishing Cove is down over here past Secret Lake. So this is the, I might blank on the name of the street, not Ten River, but by Jitters and Aquatucket, that comes down over
Tower
here
Hill?
towards Route 1, Tower Hill, thank you. Right, that would be that area down through here. And they have Oak Hill. So that's as far south as Fishing Cove would go. Then up over here is your Ten Rod Road. And then as we get closer, we're going up Post Road. Stony Lane is over here. And we have Camp Ave. And then we have Reynolds Farm. So that's the current mapping of Fishing Cove. And so what we'll be looking at is these neighborhoods that are close over here between Hamilton and Fishing Cove. But that's the current map. And then here's Hamilton. So Hamilton has the whole southern end of town up from Hamilton Allington Road south, and then West Allington Road, Indian Corner.
This is the curve?
These are the current boundary lines.
Big space. I'm Hamilton, and I'm up here, that's why I was asking.
So then, here are the suggested boundary lines, which matches up with scenario 4. So there are no changes to Forest Park currently, and there are no changes to the current setup of Quidnesset. If you are currently at Forest Park, you're staying at Forest Park. If you're currently at Quidnesset, you're staying at Quidnesset. here's where there was a change. So the neighborhood down over here, so Reynolds Farm, which is off of Post Road across from Camp Ave, the recommendation is that that neighborhood moves to Quinnesset. It's the closest neighborhood to Quinnesset Elementary School that is outside of the Fishing Cove. Did I say Forest Park? Fishing Cove. So we're moving Reynolds Farm from Fishing Cove to Quinnesset. That neighborhood, it's a new development, there's continuing to be growth, there'll be space at Quinnesset for that growth. And there, it's kind of on Post Road outside, and that would shift over to Quinnesset.
Are they building new houses in that development too?
They're continuing to.
Yeah, gotcha.
This is Stony Lane, so as I said earlier, the green here is Stony. So the colors do change, just so you know, on the suggested recommendation, we did, when Michelle did it, she did change the colors, just so we know, just can see the difference between the two. So this green is currently Stony Lane and stays Stony Lane. So here are the suggested boundary lines for Fishing Cove. Here's my bigger one. So what I would suggest is in your
So
presentation.
they're picking like the Hamilton.
Yeah, so take your current Hamilton scenario and compare it to this Fishing Cove scenario. So currently, with Hamilton, the neighborhoods that are north of west of Hamilton-Allington Road are currently at Hamilton. The suggestion, the recommendation, is that those neighborhoods shift to Fishing Cove. So this area here, which currently is Hamilton, would go to Fishing Cove.
Which historically was a lot of the neighborhoods that went to Woodford Elementary, that got
Okay.
lumped
Yeah.
into Hamilton, because
When Woodford
I
closed.
lived on Cannon Drive, which
Mhm.
is right off, kind of in that little bucket that's not blue and not anything, comes off.
Which would be over here, correct?
Nope, down,
No.
kind of right where, oh, keep going, right there, right above where
Okay.
your finger is, that,
Yeah,
yep,
right
that
there,
neighborhood
yes.
down. And we went to Whitford,
Mhm.
so I think part of that problem is that whole area that used to go to Whitford, now
Okay.
goes to
But
Hamilton,
yeah.
but could be in either.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that is the recommendation in scenario 4, that this area goes to Fishing Cove. When you look at, that's what should be Hamilton, so now you have the new boundary lines of Hamilton. Right, so Hamilton, the elementary is like right here, I mean, that's Salisbury, that's where the elementary school is. This is where scenario 4+ comes in, which is like, we literally were working on this right before coming here. So, I'm trying to think of all the different things that could come up and what families may say or may ask. And if I currently live over by this Fiscal Cove area, I'm so close to Hamilton, why are you making me move? So we ran numbers to see, what if we don't move these streets right here, because they are so close to Hamilton, and keep them at Hamilton, what would that do? It could work, but we just did it, and I really wanna look at those numbers. Because I wanna make sure that we don't have an error anywhere in that. So I think,
I mean, couldn't that argument then go to the Swan View, right on Pawtucket, and, I mean.
could, at some point, we gotta stop,
Right.
right?
I'm just
So at some
saying,
point, we
those
have
are-
to stop.
Those are all so close.
They are
equally
close.
as close, I think, as, and so I just wonder.
And they are, and that's why we say we
Yeah.
can either make a decision, say this is where the line's going to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
or we did look at that just to see, because in that scenario, it does help with some of the overages as well.
And for transportation, the fact that some of those kids are walkers would now be busing, isn't an issue.
We looked at the transportation and when it's not that big of an impact, because we have buses in the area and our buses are not full of capacity. I think what I'm looking for might have got passed around.
It might be what you got.
Where's the extra?
I think I put one aside that had weird notes on it. Because I didn't think everyone wanted, is that the one?
Yes.
I didn't want everyone to have that.
Those
so
are
much.
my weird notes.
I put it aside.
Perfect. So I didn't make copies. So,
Yeah.
so the scenario 4 plus, does look at the neighborhood like where Waldron Avenue is and Earl Drive, like that section, keeping that area at Hamilton. It's a possibility for us to look at. I wanna really look closer at these numbers before we put that out there as a suggestion. But if we were to do that, we only have one overage in our schools with that. And it's at Fishing Cove in grade 5, we're over by 1 student. It still decreases the student population at Hamilton and opens up 2 classrooms at Hamilton for the school to be used for something else. So looking at that, that is another scenario that I want to kind of dig into a little bit more to really look at to see, just to make sure these numbers are correct, because we did do that right before coming here. We're trying to really just look at everything. So that is something I'm gonna look at and I can send out to all of you once I know that's definitely another scenario. So that could be scenario 5 that we look at as a possibility that we send forward to school committee as well. What I wanna do is for you to look at those maps, look at the suggestions we're making. Your eyes may point out something different that we didn't see. So we can just, take some time right now, talk to each other, looking at that, give us some feedback, comments, and what we put forward. That way we can kind of look at things and maybe do a little more work, how do we feel about these suggestions.
Ken, do you have any idea of the number of students that would impact, like with switching these? Do you
So-
have numbers of, just so we have an
I do.
idea of how many kids are?
I wrote it down, it's Franklin.
Do you have that? Are you
So-
holding on to that?
It would be about, so there's roughly, I'm gonna give you a rough estimate. About 80 students that are leaving Hamilton and going to Fishing Cove. And it was about 20 or so students from Fishing Cove to Quidnessett. So we're talking about 100 students.
Does that include the voluntary and involuntary put back at our high school?
Yes, yeah.
This is the plus version?
No, that's, so my numbers right now,
Yeah, yeah.
that goes back to the scenario 4.
So those 80 students that would leave Hamilton are the ones that are currently the closest to Hamilton by where they live.
Some of them are, not all of them.
Not Anacosaka, because I'll be honest, I went through these maps and all separately,
Yeah.
planning to come with some ideas.
Yeah.
Many of which you've already highlighted, because that, if you look at just Anacosaka, that route of Anacosaka, based on my numbers, and that Cedar Field area where I grew up, and Steamboat, which is only a couple kids, but you're talking about 32 kids just on that Anacosaka route. It does make sense to shift that route up to Fishing Cove, based on just 32 just in that one, on that one
It's a
street.
good percentage of, not percentage, a good number of students that are in that area to move that alleviates space issues at Hamilton.
Does that help with your space issues at Fishing Cove? Still?
Yes.
Because you're moving someone
Fishing Cove.
Like some of Fishing Cove is
You're
moving,
moving
they're
some of
moving
the
the preschool plus,
right, so you would,
Another.
but you were saying for scenario 4, the 2 teachers would be eliminated, so you're not shifting any more teachers
No.
over at Fishing.
we don't the scenario does not, right now, we don't need to add classroom teachers in these scenarios. And I believe with the kindergarten, we might just be shifting K teachers around to where the needs are in the schools.
But you would be adding 60 kids, so there's still 60 more that would be at Fishing Cove.
But the Reynolds Farm neighborhood's moving up to Quid.
But that, no, so if you have
16
80, then
and
you're
20.
taking 20,
Oh,
so you still have 60. So that Fish and Cove has that capacity?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
they do.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, those kids are in that,
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
age book.
I'm sure it's in there, I'm just asking.
Can I just clarify, are we looking at all elementary schools keeping the same start and end time? Only
thought so.
because.
I thought time
So
was
what we're saying is that start times are not changing at the elementary.
Okay.
So we are not changing any start times at any school for next year.
The only reason I bring it up as a parent in the area that would, I live in the neighborhood that would be moving to, Fishing Cove from Hamilton. And I do know that, I can't speak for everybody, but the fact is that, Fishing Cove has an earlier start time and an earlier end time than Hamilton, which might be actually appealing to some families. I can't speak for everybody, but it's not, it's, they're both at great schools, and, you might find that some families are eager for that,
Earlier.
because the childcare before and after school care is so hard to get.
Selling point. Well, and either way,
It could go
I
the
never
other
even
way,
thought
too.
about that, so
Yeah.
that's something that we have to make
Highlight.
sure that gets, expressed out to the public, because I know it's not a huge chunk of time, but it can certainly change people's work schedules
Yeah.
one way or another.
But I think that goes back to that time sensitivity, like, so to get this out as soon as possible, so parents can make those changes in their childcare is very important. So I think it's good to have like all of this information and trying to, like you said, you don't want it to go too fast, but to get this out to the parents that it's impacting is kind of imperative to look for childcare.
Just to kind of talk about the start time, and that is something that we do want to look at. Within this scenario, Michelle is looking at transportation and how all this impacts transportation, and with some of these moves, she did come up with a scenario where we can change the start time at Forest Park. I wanna be careful at changing start and end times that only impact one school versus all 5 of our elementary schools, and if it would add like a third tier time, it wouldn't match up with like the early start time at the other schools, but it's just based on the population and where the buses are going, and that we could get buses over at Forest Park earlier than they're getting in right now. So we are looking at it, but it's not something that necessarily could happen right now for this current school year coming up. But it's work that we need to continue doing, because it also impacts our fleet, and do we need to buy more school buses in order to make something like that work? So that is work that this committee will be getting to. So
And then with this scenario, that doesn't impact busing.
this
Scenario 4 does not impact your busing, you're able to do all
Because
that.
even looking at the neighborhoods, there's already buses that are going within the neighborhoods that would be near Fishing Cove that have capacity to take on students.
Yep.
So, one thing that we did look into trying to say, okay, if the 5th grade students stay at their current schools, are we able to provide transportation to them? We're still trying to figure out if we can do that. It might be a little tough to be able to do that, because now it's where the buses are going, and can they pick up those students to bring them to the school. So that's something we're still looking at.
Kenny, how does this impact, what middle school they go to? Does that
It
help
doesn't,
anything?
because the neighborhoods that we're moving will stay, so like the neighborhood here.
Yep.
The Hamilton, Allenton Road, that area that we say we go to Fishing Cove, currently goes to Guthrie Middle, will stay at Guthrie Middle. And then Reynolds Farm, that'll be going from Fishing Cove to Quinnesset, goes to Davisville Middle, will stay going to Davisville Middle.
Can you present families with the option to say, like, they can, the 5th graders can go to the new school or self-transport to, stay at their current school?
We are looking
Is
at
that
that.
an option?
It could be an option, we just wanna, we gotta look at the impact it would have.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we were allowed, because I didn't know if we were obligated to actually provide.
And then we may, because if they have siblings, right, cause that was the other thing we were trying to say, can we keep the siblings together, that was a concern, right? I mean, as a parent, wouldn't be happy or, really in favor of having to split my children up now, because my current 5th grader is gonna stay at Stony Lane, but my 2nd and 3rd grader being moved to Knesset. Not a scenario, we're looking at doing it as an example. And And then do I choose to say, well, no, my fifth grade is gonna go and move, or do I just make that decision and now have kids for 1 year in different schools?
I know you wanna move on and, talk, can we have a clarifying kind of goal for the end of this session? Maybe, and I don't know if you've already eliminated in your head a couple of these options, but like basically to say by the end of tonight, we know we don't wanna do scenario 1 or scenario 2, just kind of let's maybe have some sort of final goal.
Yeah, so let's do this. Please, partner up, look at these together, look and see what this information is telling you regarding these scenarios. Is there something else that you see saying, oh, why are you considering this neighborhood just for us to look at? Okay. And then also, kind of give us your recommendation of what scenarios should we stay with and kind of work more with to bring forward to school committee. And, I kind of already have in my head which ones I know it's not gonna work, but let us know which ones that you don't think are going to work. And that's so let's take, I know it's already 6:30, wanna take like 20 minutes to talk, if we finish early, I wanna give you enough time to kind of look at it. But let's say 15, 20 minutes, and at the end we can kind of have that conversation, and we'll take notes of what you are seeing in this information you're recommending. Yeah, if you wanna see larger maps, you have.
Oh, sorry. I just think you guys have, I definitely don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? I'm curious.
So, but they would be going to school right now. Just, oh, you mean like grandfathering in everybody?
Yeah, exactly. So I know, so it's like, you're always gonna have one or two, like,
That's gonna be scenario 1. You know what I mean? If you do that. So I had the 5th grade grandfather. To me, the 5th grade move is a brutal move, right? If we can avoid that.
I have my son, now he's in 5th grade. We were just talking about, does he want to be something? He makes all this great money.
Oh, really? What school?
Because he should have been able to.
Oh.
He got
Because of, this will help them.
yes, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So situations that you feel so for this, for now.
Yeah. And like it is, it's like you're always gonna make, you know how it works, like, you're always gonna get people, there's always gonna be some unfortunate situation. Like there's no avoiding it, no matter what it is. We always hear from people. You know,
Right, yeah.
but like I look at it just from a standpoint of like, we really need space. It's like, that's like, I've been talked about ever since I was started. That's all I've heard. It's like they're just shocked. I think, and like, I like scenario 4, only because I think it's a nice thing to try to keep the 5th grade steady for a year, so they can finish at their school. And I think it gives us some breathing, you know? Like right now, it's just, we know we're like on the edge, you know what I mean? Like I know, like, we've seen it with kindergarten stuff, right? Just the numbers that come in, it's like, it's just a very stressful situation for families, trying to make decisions that we know we're not gonna do.
Right. We also have to, this has to be the best scenario for the year. Instead of every year we're doing something, we're Band-Aids for a couple years. Nobody best just do what's best for the long term. And we see
Four plus like 415.
It's easier to look, Rob, look up on the screen. If that top blue part, that part would stay at Hamilton, right, for 4+, right? Which of course would be ideal.
The thing you might do with that is you might have people start applying that. You know what I mean? Because
Right, like where's the cutoff?
you know, and so like, maybe they won't, okay, maybe they won't.
But Rob, not if you do it, like, set it up. Like this, like, it has to be, this is where the boundary is. But like if you do it later on, and then everyone's scenario.
This call scenario 5 has now less students that we're
That's
getting.
why we were asking for that data, like, to be able to do it.
Oh, it would make efficient vote like that.
I think it would.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean. We don't know, right? That's
And like you have kids on this, right? But you have mom.
But I don't think that whole, it's funny, our friends
Oh, yeah.
but that was my challenge, because obviously we have to.
whereas I think
It makes sense to change that boundary further south, and you're still cutting straight across. Now you're not disrupting. No, I don't think it, I don't think it's.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the same goal, you know what I mean, these are from our lab. Yeah. I think that's great time, so and they're saying, there's no way I'm gonna
oh, yeah.
my kids are all
It's kind of a shame we do provide it. You know, I don't know.
At one,
Yeah.
Did you just? The funniest
Yep, we got lumberjack on Thursday. So maybe your PE teacher shared it with our kids. I hope that they all shared it.
Oh, that's the condos that were in elementary, that they were supposed to. They called them?
No, because look, it says master.
That was a developer that came in and was gonna build condos in Arlen, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You already know this. So then you're back to what are the things that, like, it doesn't sound like Lydia shared.
I mean,
That's great. So just be around here for last kindergarten. Or the kindergarten.
well, I had no idea.
And then
Oh, good, good.
can't really see it.
Yeah. So we because I said, I'm like, maybe there's some rates or nothing because I can't help you. Totally agree. So just do what I do. She's asking, can I snowboard? I'm like, no, because I can't help you. You're like, you're a teenager. I'm not over skating.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a whole lot. It's stressful. We're working with other families, because 3 adults on 5 kids.
Yeah.
It's better than 1 or 2. It's the first time we've had a storm in the winter.
They're all the places that they should go. Love us.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, no, that's great. Making sure our plans well, they're showing that that's not going to, but it's not.
This seems like
Yeah, I put it, right, yeah, I did.
Well, just because we do meaningful plans, we don't get much.
Oh, it is, I'm sure it is. But yeah, like,
I don't know. Yeah, we try to do it.
Alright, I'm gonna bring the group back and that way we can share out. So we're gonna do this in an organized way. We're just gonna go around the room. Jody's taking notes for us. So, we have a recording tool, so that's good. We go back and watch the recording tool, right? So, first what we're gonna do is kind of go around and I'm gonna ask you, what do you see, right? Kind of thoughts, comments. Brian and I were just having a really good concept utilization that we'll share out with the group as well. But just for us to kind of be thinking of and considering, and Jody, talk slow so Jody can get those points for us in the, she's putting everything in the presentation so we have it in those final slides to look at. So, Brian, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Conflict utilization.
So I was just mentioning, adding a column to the spreadsheet for utilization, knowing that, a lot of the spaces are being, maxed out. So if you look at, Hamilton, for example, if you're moving kids and you have 2 classrooms that are now available for everyone to kind of stretch out inside of the building and have appropriate space, then looking at the utilization is now that building is still at 100% capacity because you're using every single space inside of it. As you start looking at some of the other schools, if you start subtracting the enrollment by the capacity, there's gonna be a delta inside of there as well, and then some of these schools are also gonna be maxed out because there's other things that are not factored into there, like special ed resources and other things inside of there. So it'd be helpful to include that so that this way you can explain that these buildings are being maximized with
So
these.
classroom utilization, is that what you mean? How, if all the classes,
It should be recognized by the whole school because there'll be other needs besides just
alright.
classrooms, because there'll be other support spaces.
alright, thank you.
Right, Nicole,
Yeah, do you wanna?
we were talking.
Because we work as a
Three.
team,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Go ahead, Shreya.
Oh. So we like 3 and 4, and we like 4 better because of, keeping the 5th grade at the current school, because we felt like if you can do that, and they're not so different in the numbers, and then in the 3 and 4, those grand totals really hit what we had discussed as being priorities, and that was reducing in Hamilton and growing in Quid.
We also
Is that
noticed
good?
that the positions in scenario 4 would also be cut in scenario 3.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, it wasn't noted on that
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
so in scenario 3, you'd save those classrooms at Hamilton as well. Anything we?
No, you guys covered it.
So, we want you to keep going with 4 plus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just keep looking at 4 plus. Next
So when I
one.
think of district need, I think, scenario 4 makes the most amount of sense to me, from my lens as a special ed student service director. Allowing a little more breathing room at Hamilton would help some of the programs that currently exist that are in very small rooms. So there's that piece, and also obviously the ability to, keep the 5th graders there, I think is really important. I think that helps with student anxiety, and also like the idea of being able to, support the positions we need. So kind of multifaceted, it makes the most amount of sense to me. And I like the idea of 4 plus 2, if they're almost in walking distance, or it looks like it.
I mean, I honestly feel like you have done all of these numbers, you have looked at them, so I do trust what you're looking at too and providing with us all the information, so it seems like 4 and 3 seem to be the 2 best. I think 1 and 2 are out. 3 and 4 seem to be the best too, but I respect and value what you are saying as, you know, the leaders of this district, so I think that's what we should go with.
Yeah, I agree with the 3 and 4, it just makes the most sense.
We worked as a group, and I think that scenario 4 is the best. I like how they're leaving the 5th grade students at their school. I wouldn't wanna be like separated in the last year, kinda confusing.
Do you have anything new?
I
would consider 4+, it sounds like that serves the currently enrolled students and also trying to keep fifth graders, and then also solves some of the problem going forward. I know it's not perfect, but I think it best serves the community.
Yeah, I think 4 made the most sense on paper. I think what was really tripping me up, I really had to look at all of the maps, because the current Hamilton map cuts off that whole area that would be moving. So I just spent a lot of time looking at the maps and kind of arrived at 4+, that, you know, most of that area definitely makes sense to move, but maybe the closest communities to Hamilton might need a closer look.
Yeah, we basically felt the same, that, for kind of practically speaking, we thought was the strongest option. 4+ is kind of preferable in terms of, you know, having walking communities. As you said, need to run the numbers on that, so I think 4+ would be our preference, followed by 4.
I'm interested in scenario number 4, looking at the numbers for Hamilton. It gives us 2 more classrooms those classrooms would be utilized, but at least classrooms that are being squished right now will have their own space. I also like the part that the 5th graders will be able to stay, and I'm interested in, 4+ as well for our school.
Same, I mean, I think it's the only one that really makes sense, and I don't think, based on what you guys have looked at, that you've missed any big neighborhoods where there's a chunk of students where it would make sense. And I really like 4 and/or 4+, for all the reasons, that have been mentioned, but also keeping middle school consistent with where it is now, because I do think that was, that could have created a lot of disruption and concern, so.
And
in favor.
I just want to add one more thing, also scenario 4, there's only 1 grade that's 1 over, compared to scenario 3.
I'm gonna pass.
You can't talk while you're doing
No.
that.
We spoke and I think I can speak for both of us, Jody, please
Yes.
correct me if I'm off, that we agreed 3 and 4, with, moving more towards 4. I probably an outlier of that. I personally, I think 4A is fine, but I see that the neighborhood, that the Bissell Cove area is, in terms of a community neighborhood, they interact a lot more with the people in Anaquatucket than they do on Westmoreland. So as like a neighborhood, I don't know if it might be, the kids who live on Anaquatucket can bike over and to the kids and visit one another. Now they're elementary school, so I don't know how much that happens, although I do know that kids do bike along Anaquatucket to Hamilton. So I kind of think that 4 as it is okay to me. And then you had a thing, Jody, about did you wanna mention the?
No, that's
another road, yeah.
That's all.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, Mr. Resnati and I talked, and I think we kind of agree with everybody else. We really liked 4. And I did like 4+, the concept of that. But it's interesting, that was interesting feedback, because I don't know the community well enough. So, you don't wanna have to go and, survey, because then you can't start getting into all the weeds there.
Yeah.
But that is really good feedback to consider, especially if we're moving the Anaquatucket people, and, community, and then to keep them together if they are a community. So something to think about, but I think either scenario, 4 or 4+, are actually best case scenarios, and I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. I was a little bit nervous coming into this meeting, like, oh gosh, this is gonna be sticky. To me, it's not as sticky as I thought it was gonna be, so I think that's a good thing. And something I wanna add for everyone to know that you may not know, we are actually in the middle, before the bond, we're in the middle of a new demographic study, which will also give us updated enrollment numbers, projected enrollment numbers. So that, I think, will also be another piece that, we had the census in October come out, and we do have a 10-year projected study that goes through 2031, 32, but that was done a while back, so this will be the most updated one. So I think that'll be helpful, also just to give us projected enrollment numbers, another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I just wanna add, I think, we spoke 4 plus is kind of where we are. I think it's important, and Dr. Dugas mentioned this a couple of times, but I think it's important to always note that, you know, whatever decisions get made, and not making a decision is a decision, but whatever decision gets made, these are difficult decisions, and obviously we're dealing with, you know, significant impacts on kids and families and whatnot, and I think that the process we followed has been a good process, and the input that you've all provided has been very valuable, and I don't know, I'm just saying, I'm impressed with the comments that you brought to the meeting today, and it's really nice to know that we have a community that's willing to be a part of this and to bring information to us. It's very nice.
So, thank you for that feedback. I think from here, what we're going to do is I did hear, 4 plus, to be looking at someone, I did mention, you know, maybe to still kind of consider looking at scenario 3, but I think we can safely say scenarios 1 and 2 are off the list. So we have whittled that down to 2 or 3 scenarios, which will be good. We will continue to look at those numbers to dig deeper. Another thing we would look at, we want to make sure that these moves don't impact our Title I funding at Quinnesset. Quinnesset is a full Title I school. Mission Cove is a targeted Title I school. It's based on your economically disadvantaged students, families that are at that school that bring in the Title I funding. So we were careful at looking at neighborhoods and making those moves, because you don't want to also lose any of the federal funding that we receive through the Consolidated Resource Plan for Title I that brings resources into Quinnesset and Fishing Cove. And I really don't think looking at the neighborhoods and what we did will not, but it's something that we can run some numbers and see, but I don't think it will.
Just in my initial, I think the much bigger risk would be Fishing Cove over, I mean, we're not talking about a big change for Quid,
Yeah.
and the numbers are just so high there.
Mhm.
Fishing Cove is much closer to the line.
Do the preschool numbers factor into the
No.
Title I? I didn't think so, but I just wanted to,
Yeah.
that doesn't really impact the population, the numbers, because they're, just for those that know, you're basing your total population of students based on your students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, which then calculate to how you get your Title I funding, so. We have a meeting on March 11th. I'd like to suggest if we can, another meeting in March. I think we're kind of getting close to making some decisions, and I think it's important that we can meet again with everyone. If we can find a day in March, would everyone be up for that? And that way we just kind of continue this work and this process so we can get to a decision. Maybe we can just kind of look at the calendar, see if there is.
Kenny, just to clarify, this is a recommendation body that would bring the recommendation to
So
school committee,
as-
correct?
Yep, so as the advisory committee, this committee will be making a recommendation, so we will be looking for a formal vote. All these notes, and I've been writing up something so I can actually submit a report to the school committee with what we're doing, and I've started that process of putting that report together. That will get submitted to the school committee, basically everything we've been talking about, considering from the first meeting, and what that recommendation is, and us putting that recommendation forward to the school committee. We do have one school committee rep that's here, so that's very helpful. And you've been very helpful on this committee of working with us and letting us do this work, bringing it forward and supporting that. And then we'll bring this to the entire committee with that recommendation that comes from here.
I'd also like to add along those lines, just real quick. This is just from a few years of study, research and stuff. I think we should also try to be very prudent and careful about what we bring to the school committee. How do I say this? We are a larger body, a more representative group in the community. And I think that we've done a lot of like back work on this and legwork, and we're trying, really hard to bring good recommendations. While I agree that, it's always good to bring a number of options, sometimes I almost think that if you have some good options, you know, don't throw in like extra options that give, you know, that might, the school committee might like ruminate over for too long and kind of pick apart, whereas we've done a lot of the work, like, and especially you all have, you came prepared with your options, right? And you've done all that research, and now we're kind of whittling it down even more. So, does this make sense? I feel like we should give them the school, bring options to the school committee, but on the other hand, not too many.
So
Bring our best
Yeah, I agree with you,
choice.
and I'm gonna compare this to when we do interviews in the
Yeah, I was
district.
gonna say.
Okay,
something.
I always tell our administrators and our interview committee, do not recommend an applicant to us that you're really not happy with. Because by the time it gets to me, what if I choose that person?
That's right.
And then now you're not happy with my decision because I chose someone, so never put forward a recommendation you don't want someone to take. Only put forward the recommendations that you can live with. Just like when you interview, we want the best people in front of our kids or administrators, or whoever they may be. Don't put someone there kind of about. Same thing with this. Don't put forward a recommendation of a scenario that they're like, we have to live with this, and we have to know that we're making the best decision for our school community, because it needs to be something that lasts.
So is there, given that, I don't disagree with you, is there a bad thing to say, as a collective team, we researched and came up with multiple scenarios, this is the best option?
If
and
we
you
put
come
one
with this-
forward, we put one forward.
Right.
I would actually encourage that. I would encourage more
Wanna whittle
communication than
down
less.
to-
Yes,
You know,
Less is more.
yeah.
less is more, except when it comes to communicating what we want, because I think it's important to advocate for what you want, and sometimes people defer, like, well, let them decide. That's not always the best thing,
I think
so,
more was good in this group, because you're getting.
And that's
Yeah.
the job, this is a working group, that is our job to kind of go through, to look at everything, to be able to bring that down to, here's the recommended scenario.
and it's representatives from all different parts of our community. You know, that's really important, that we've got everyone from the students all the way up, you know, so
And
from,
we appreciate the input, you know, what I mean, like, this is important work that we're doing, and all of you are bringing a voice to the table that, as administrators or school committee members, we may not see because we're looking at certain things, and, you know, I know, like, we're also parents, some of us, well, we're all parents in the district. So, you know, and like you try to look at that too, but the lens that you bring as students and parents and community members and, you know, even thinking of, you know, your outside jobs that you have, that you're trying to consider options and help for us, you know, Brian, you work at Brian in the SBA, so you're looking at that, you know, you're obviously bringing some of that in. You've provided information from, you know, think about how do we include Brown in something and have some students look at some data, like, that's all important stuff that we kind of look at to bring in, for us to make the best decision that we need to make for our students.
yeah, I always say we have so many
And
experts out there in this
teachers, parents,
community,
students, and
right?
teachers, and
Like,
principals, so it is.
we need to
It's-
take advantage of the community members who wanna participate and literally volunteer their time to give us their expert opinions.
I'd appreciate the people that understood the maps, because man, I can read a map, but the little dots, and I just couldn't do that, so, and I don't understand the layout of the neighborhoods as well as you all. So I know I really appreciated, like, hey, what about this neighborhood, what about this bucket? That was really helpful, because I wouldn't necessarily see that. I'm much better at programming for kids.
And we'll send out, we'll go back and look at the notes that, and thank you, Jody, for taking those notes. It's hard to be talking and taking notes at the same time. We'll look at that, we'll get that sent out to you for all the review. If there's something else prior to the 11th that you're thinking of, then we'll figure that out and try to come up with what is best, a little down even more on the 11th. We meet on the 11th, and then on the,
Are we gonna try to keep it Tuesdays, because the next school
Yes.
committee meeting is the 18th, after that?
yeah, no, that's good, that's what I'm looking at. So we meet on the 11th, so I can provide a summary to the school committee on the 18th, and then I would recommend if March 25th, we could have another follow-up meeting, and that way we're moving closer to getting a decision, so we can get something at the April school committee meeting.
Same time.
Yes, we do the same time at 5 o'clock, if that can work. There's no other district meetings.
Stony has an event, sorry, science fair,
Oh,
5:30. Sorry, can't be there.
no, that's okay.
change day, cause we moved it from the Wednesday to the Tuesday. I'll do that right next to everything.
I mean, April
What
first.
time is the science fair?
5:30.
We don't have another school committee meeting till April 8th after the March 18th one. So we could do like
You could do
Tuesday,
April
April 1st,
April Fools.
and then, and then still get information to the school committee for the recommendations to the school committee.
Does April 1st work?
Doesn't work for me, but I'm only one.
Can you send it
You guys
to
want
someone
to?
else?
Yeah, I can send it up.
How much notice, is
I
the
might
school
be able to
committee
make
meeting
it.
on the 8th?
Yes.
Does that give enough
I can't
time
do
to
it.
prepare? Usually doesn't the
I think
school
that's
committee
Tuesday,
want
Tuesday
the
first.
recommendations?
We try to get stuff.
Oh, no.
We
We
have-
have it on the 20, is anyone else? Is that too tight?
What is it?
Is April first too tight?
For what, April 8th,
Yeah.
the school committee meeting? I mean, all you're doing is, if we have the recommendation ready from us, it's just a matter of getting it into our agenda
So at
packet.
the March 18th meeting, we can provide
More.
good
Right,
information to them of where we're going,
right.
right?
I can't be there on April 1st either, sorry. I have to miss the next meeting, I'd love to not miss both, but that's just.
I mean, do we have to do it Tuesday? Problem is, all the other school committee meetings and meetings you
So-
guys have. Meeting palooza.
I know.
What about the 26th or another?
There's a
meeting?
wellness meeting and then DMS has empty bowls. Um, 27th, there's concerts here, Clear has a math night.
Let's say no to Friday.
Not really for-
I mean, I think you have to leave it consistent on a Tuesday and just, and there's people that are
Do it on
missing
the
tonight.
20th,
too,
the
so-
same week as the school committee meeting?
No, Friday.
On what, March 20th?
Yeah.
Sorry, Stony Lane has an event that night.
Go West.
Go West.
Go West.
I mean, it's only second grade,
Fishing
but.
Cove has speed night, Stony Lane has a Go West night.
Do they second grade, do they
About
want to
Monday
be
the
like in
24th.
covered wagons?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
build
really
up.
much
Is it like the old game?
multiple songs.
Do you get to stay, just?
We have a budget and finance, as long as we meet after, and I don't mind doing back-to-back meetings, we just have to,
Up to the group.
On the 24th?
24th, they have to be later at night if that's okay.
And you don't have, that might be a town council meeting, you don't have anything to do with that on that Monday night?
It's not on the calendar yet.
I'm not saying it isn't, it's just, I know they meet on Mondays and I know they met last night.
They're doing something new this year, where they full day of hearings. So
Yeah.
March 18th, I got an email saying it's not, it's 9:30. We have to present the budget on March 18th at 9:30. Don't we know if to do something on the 24th?
They've done that, they've done that.
work for the majority of the
Yeah.
panel.
But that's the science fair.
No, the first.
No, the
First-
the first two people couldn't be here.
But I can send, but the 25th is the event at the school,
Okay.
so.
She can say that, but the 25th is a science fair,
So let me ask you something,
which impacts
is,
three of us.
do we
at least
absolutely
three, four
have
of
to
us.
have two more meetings before? I mean, could March 11th, could we just
Or maybe we
really?
can see if, I mean, it's always good to have another one on the books,
Yeah,
but
I
I wonder
like to-
whether we can
I
get
like to
everything done and
schedule-
name that tune on the 11th.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Name that tune, get the vote done on the 11th.
Yeah, what more, maybe what we're considering, what I hear is this should be like 4 or 4 plus maybe.
That's how it sounds to me.
This was harder, cause you had more options.
And we could, I don't wanna feel like we're rushing something.
But if we don't come to a conclusion, then we
Then
can
we
make
have
it,
to
we
schedule
make it.
We
Yeah.
did, so, but I'd rather, but if we don't schedule it now, we'll never get it scheduled,
Yeah, true.
so we need to schedule it, because otherwise.
You're not gonna have everyone agree on one
Yeah.
night, so you're just gonna have to.
So, alright, so March 25th is the science fair at Stony Lane, we can't, cause that impacts
A lot,
a
yeah.
good amount of us that can't be here. What time's, what time's the science fair end?
Or what about, March 31st, the Monday, that gives us what, then you can, gives us one more day.
Don't
March
plan around,
31st.
I'm away for work that week, that's why the first didn't work,
Oh.
but don't, I
For
already
the whole week.
sent
I can do it
somebody
for-
on the 11th, because I'm away that week for work too. So I just would like to not miss both, but
What time's the
I don't
science
want
fair,
it to
Nicole?
just be.
5:30 to 6:30.
Other processing
That's-
votes?
7 is too late. 24th,
That's-
what time?
That's 5 of us going to a science fair.
Yeah, you
She's
can't do
got
it
that
on
result
the
at
24th? What time is it, like 6 or something instead, because you have something earlier?
So March 24th,
Which is a Monday.
March 24th is a Monday, we have a budget and
And
finance
finance
meeting.
meeting.
Megan just raised it as a town council, I don't know if.
Not necessarily, I just know that they have them on Mondays, and I know that, I think they had one last night, does anybody know if town council met last night?
They did meet last night.
Okay, so
They were
that was
meeting
also
after
budget
us.
and finance, I'm assuming you guys are on the same schedule, that's just my assumption.
Alright,
Anyway,
let's, what was it,
18th?
of March?
Oh, that's a school committee
Yeah, we
meeting.
have school committee. Alright, so let's go with March 24th. We have budget and
Or April
finance.
first.
What?
Or April 1st.
I think two of us could. 24th, okay, March
24th
24th is a tentative.
At what time you're thinking?
We can,
Should we do like 5:30 as a budget and finance?
no, because it's in a different building, and I need 0 driving.
6 o'clock?
Right.
So budget and finance is 4:30 to 5:30 at Main Street.
Oh, 5:30, I thought it was 4 to 5.
And that really doesn't give us enough space. Like I said, let's just meet there, but it's gonna be very cramped for us. What if we say 6 o'clock? And then if we have to, you start the meeting, and I'll just get here as soon as I can. Does that work, 8 or 6 o'clock on the
Yes.
24th?
Did you bring snacks?
Is it gonna be 6 to 8?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's hard to get this
Yeah.
done in like an hour, people say 6 to 8. Rachel just say she's bringing this.
I said we should bring snacks. Last night I was chewing on dried mango. I'm like,
You gotta be careful what you bring, that, those microphones.
I will
pick
get a
up all of
calendar
it.
sent out to everyone. Thank you very much. So March 11th is our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. How are all your,
I'm telling them.
watch this. Mario, stop, getting information off of Facebook. Like, period.
That's the story of my life.